It's just easier for me.
Yeah.
But everything that is beyond law, that is not law, but societal rules, organizational rules, authority rules, here I would challenge. And I will only pick those rules that make sense to me and that work for me. It doesn't mean that I'm illegal. I don't do anything illegal.
Right.
But I also don't do anything that doesn't make me feel comfortable.
What if the truth came in a gel cap and we could just pop it in our mouths and forget about it? Well, it doesn't. And we can't. But we can laugh in the face of reality while plotting our survival. Welcome to the Truth Tastes Funny podcast. I am your host, Hersh. And if my guests can handle the truth, so can you. Open wide, folks. Here it comes. With me on Truth Tastes Funny today is Erin Andrea Craske. She's an award-winning strategist with a 20-year career, culminating as global head of consumer brands. And with expertise in strategic development, profitability, leadership, and communication, she is an ICF-certified business and leadership success coach. And the way I want to describe her now is empowering conscious business rebels to achieve success on their terms and discover freedom and meaning to live, lead, and create effortlessly. Welcome, Erin, to Truth Tastes Funny.
Well, first of all, Hersh, thank you very much for inviting me and for having me here. And secondly, I start already feeling like, angel wings are growing through the introduction. That was impressive. I didn't know that I'm so good.
Yes, well,
sometimes it's nice to hear, if you don't praise yourself, nobody will. So thank you very much for praising myself. I don't need to do it, but I don't need to do it now.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that's what third-party validation does. You don't have to come, well, I'm this and I'm that. Now we can dive in and we can just talk about, because on this show, a lot of it has to do with getting through life, but also thriving. And so it's not enough to just survive some of the crazy things that go on in the world. It's how do we make, lemonade out of it? How do we make, they say when you get lemons, make lemonade, how do we make the most delectable life possible out of what we're given?
Yeah, that's a good. And I like the word thriving, although I would prefer to say sailing.
Sailing.
Because thriving in my world still implies that you make a certain effort, or you just put a bit too much energy behind it, or it's like masculine energy, this famous masculine, feminine energy, while sailing is more feminine. It's more effortless.
Yeah, I like that. Well, let's talk a little bit about the rebel aspect. You're kind of a natural born rebel, right?
Yes, I presume I am. Yeah, looking back at my history.
So you're a rebel. You have a unique, blend of personalities in that you're both oriented toward the statistical, the analytical, and also the creative.
Actually, it's a little bit more than that. I learned recently because I couldn't figure out, when I was in business, it was very easy for me to see the bigger picture and also to see details. So I could do both simultaneously. And I thought that everybody is like that. And only recently I was talking to a lady and she's a pro in Enneagram personality types. And because I have 3 personalities, and two of them, actually, one is supposed to see the bigger picture and the second one's supposed to be in details. So I'm balancing within myself. It was so much fun. And again, I thought that everybody is like that. I was surprised to find out that either or is typically present.
And so how does it work for you in terms of marrying these two qualities? Because sometimes they might be at odds with one another.
It just comes natural. I never thought about it because, again, I can see bigger picture because as a strategist, I need to see this, to have this helicopter view and also see a few steps ahead just as a direction, but at the same time to justify my strategy, to give basis to the strategy, I will need to go deep into details because it's all about analysis. And both things, just they feel comfortable to me. I don't struggle with either.
Yeah.
And this is why, because it comes so naturally, I thought that everybody is like that. So, yeah,
Yeah.
and analysis, I love it. And the funny thing is, when I was looking for a job, oh my God, I hate it. They start sending you all these math tests, that you need to do the mental calculations quickly, whatever. Every time I was trying to explain, guys, brand strategy and brand marketing isn't about math, because I can calculate in Excel, and it does actually much better job, that I would have done myself. But it is
Yeah.
about being analytical, because you need to be able to read these numbers and create the story behind, explain what numbers are about. If I can count, but I can't analyze, it really doesn't help in the marketing or brand strategy. Unless probably it's digital marketing, I don't know much about. But
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So being analytical definitely helps in what I was doing.
Yeah, that's interesting because sometimes people will think it's all about just the numbers, or that there is a thing that you plug in. And really the analytical part is what distinguishes us, our ability to analyze. You know, we are analytical creatures, but the question is, how much of it do we have? And when you're wanting to help people, live life and make it effortless, what do you mean by effortless? Because we even talked about that a little bit, where something may seem effortless, but it requires effort. So what does effortless mean in your view?
Well, to tell you the truth, I'm not a magician. So I can't make anything effortless like that, even if
Yeah.
I would like to, right? So it will require initial effort to train yourself to become effortless, because we don't change overnight as much as we would like to. Cinderella may do, but how many of us are you Cinderella? I'm
No.
not. Okay, here you go. So,
Yeah.
in my world, how I see the effortlessness, the first step, you need to become authentic to who you are. And this authenticity is not about who you are in this particular moment of time, because we need to realize that with time, we acquire a lot of, how would I say this word without swearing? A lot of negative things that don't serve us.
If you don't want to swear, you could use the word shit. That would also
It's
work.
exact,
You could.
but this is exactly the word I
Oh,
wanted
okay.
to
Well, we have an
use, but I
explicit
thought that
rating.
probably.
We have an explicit rating, so we can say whatever we want. You could say that
Right,
if you
okay.
like.
Thank you very much. So yes, to add expressiveness to what I'm saying, over time we acquire a lot of shit that doesn't serve us.
Yeah.
And we start believing that what we think we are actually is who we are,
Right.
which is not correct, because we are the authentic is underneath this pile of shit that we
Right.
carry on through life. So if we would like to live effortlessly, the first step is to remove this, I don't know, volcano ash that covers,
Right.
the fertile soil, the goodness that we have. So when we get through this exercise, and trust me, what we discover is so amazing, because all our issues that we are suffering from, lack of confidence, poor self-esteem, insecurities, fears, all this stuff, it will either completely go away, or it will diminish, right? Because it all comes from this volcano ash that we believe, it's how the soil's supposed to look like. No, the soil actually covers with green herbs and not volcanic, dark thing.
Mhm.
And then when we accept this beautiful, powerful individual that we are, the next step is to train your mind. You train your mind to not to think. So this is where the training is coming from, because often, not often, all the time, whatever we don't like about our life, about our behavior, about other people, about what surrounds us, it all comes from our thinking. So the first thing that we have in our mind is a thought. And then, as we all know from psychology, the thought going to create emotions, emotions going to create behavior, and blah, blah, blah. And actually, before the thought, you have beliefs.
Mhm.
So when we talk about authenticity and shit, this about the belief that we need to get rid of. So this one, okay, that moved away, and then we don't have the first step. We're only starting, from thinking, and this is the thing that we need to take care of. We need to control it. If you can't, ideally, we need to dissolve it. Controlling again is a little bit effortful.
Right, right.
Dissolving it or letting it go, letting it pass by, that will make our life so much easier. We don't even believe, because the problem is we accept our thoughts as given. We accept them as, appeal to action, because we think
Mm.
it means that is correct. It means that this is how it is. It means that we have to react on it. No, it just means that thought is a thought. It doesn't mean anything else.
Yeah.
And
That's a great point, because without thought there isn't action, right? We have to process a thought and make a decision to physically act on something. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that we have to. Just because we have a reaction or have an emotion doesn't mean we have to share it. And in this day and age, we're so conditioned, and young people are getting conditioned, coming up being conditioned to immediately communicate every thought, because there's this cycle of engagement that happens through social media. And so the programming is to put every thought out. And then once you put it out, now you have to pursue it. Now you have to put it into some kind of action because you've shared it. You put the thought out. So the
but
effort,
you know what?
yeah, go ahead.
I go even further than that, and I will say something totally controversial. What are our worries or anxieties?
Yeah. What you're asking, what are we afraid of, or what's,
And what are our worries or anxieties? They are first our thoughts,
oh, right. Yes. Yeah.
right? So what we believe about ourselves when we label ourselves that I am a shy person. What is shy person? It's your thought,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
So I'm going further than that. So if you realize that because when you tell yourself that I'm shy, there's an amazing video on YouTube about it, that you accept this identity of being a shy person and you start behaving accordingly, and you enclose yourself because you are afraid of being with people because you're so shy. But when you realize that the fact that I'm shy is actually the thought that I'm telling to myself and accepting it as a truth. Same about worries and anxiety. You know, what is anxiety? It's our fear of the future
Right.
that
Yeah.
may or may not happen, but in reality, any fear is a thought. So you can work on trying to dissimulate fear. It's also possible there are different techniques. Or you can take an easy way and learn how to keep your mind empty and not to dwell on a thought until it becomes thinking, because you can easily get rid of a thought easily, well, relatively easy. But when it becomes thinking, then you're screwed.
Yeah. I remember when I first learned that anxiety was essentially the feeling of worry that you were going to become afraid, was how it was explained to me. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Why wouldn't you just be afraid? Like, in other words, if something's scary, you would just be afraid. Why, what does anxiety mean? And now, as I've gotten older, I understand it better. But if I'm understanding you correctly, you're kind of saying, well, if you catch it early enough and you learn how to dispel it and clear it out, it never graduates to fear. It doesn't graduate uh
Exactly.
to become a problem.
Exactly. What's more, the way you were explained that it's a feeling, the feeling comes from thinking. So we
Yeah.
immediately disregard the first step and we say, okay, anxiety is a feeling, but feeling isn't generated from nothing. Something has to trigger it. And what triggers, it's our thinking or all the thought, depends, which stage, how deep you went into that, into the process. And another thing about anxiety and fears, there are different types of fears, because what you said, why you just don't be afraid, like if there are rational fears and irrational fears. When they're rational, yes, you gonna be afraid because there is an imminent threat to your existence or whatever the threat is, but the threat is real. All other fears, they are irrational. So this is why people don't get afraid because of fears, but they acquire this feeling of whatever you got explained that may not even ever materialize.
Yeah. And how does this play into your one's relationship with authority? What role does authority play in our worries, fears, and so forth?
I have no idea what the role authority plays because I have no authority. I don't accept authority, and I don't really care what they say and what I'm supposed to feel or believe according to what they say. So that actually makes it easy for me. But that said, and we talked about previously about 3 personalities that I have, right? And one of them, yes, is a rebel. Another one is a creator and also explorer. And explorer it's not the one who travels. There is a kind of stereotype. It's a Buddha-like approach to living. And basically what I realized, because rebels are very much outworthy. So, whatever you want to change is external. While explorer, it's whatever you want to change is internal. Right. So what happens, I guess, in my case, because I'm not the person that's going to be destroying things around me for the sake of showing that I'm against or challenging something. Right. So I see that I challenge something. It doesn't work for me. I don't want to follow it. But instead of going against it, which in most cases is actually quite stupid, some cases work, some don't. It really depends. I create my own world within myself. So to answer your question, if we talk about authority, yes, authority is external. I don't accept it, but it doesn't mean I fight it because I also know where to fight and where not to fight. So I go inside and I change my perception and marinate, and I'm still free, but in total irrelevance to the authority. I don't know if it makes sense.
I think it makes sense because I think what it is that you're utilizing the power of awareness to serve your goals. So
Exactly.
your objectives. So in other words, and this is a good lesson for anyone, which is that when you're feeling an emotion or when something happens and you have a gut reaction or something, if you step outside yourself a little bit and examine that emotion, you might be able to put it in proper perspective. That can often apply to business. People get emotional about stock or some other thing, and they get emotional and their reaction may not be what's best for them or for their objectives. But if they can step outside that emotion and note that they're feeling it, note that it has a place, but kind of put it in perspective, they might be better served.
Yeah, I will go again one step further, actually. When I had talked a lot about it, but again, it's just pure psychology. All often we say that, oh, that irritates me, or this person pissed me off, or whatever negative perception that we're carrying or we're feeling, it's always, again, often we say that this person did it to me, the situation did it to me, and blah. Right? In reality, it's not the case because nobody has power to create any feelings inside of you. And I always give an example. So, Hersh, assuming I will call you bad name, really bad name. So, what are options do you have? You have an option to get pissed off with me, right? Because I did it. You have an option to fight back and call me bad name. You have an option to sulk and, go away. You have an option to disregard completely, not to paying attention, or you have an option like to basically accept the situation and never see me again because you don't want to do anything with a person like me, right? If you look from this perspective, the reaction is within you, because
Yeah.
you can choose any of this reaction that you find suitable, including being pissed off or irritated. But it is within you to control. What we very often do, and it's not only in these situations, in many other situations, and our culture actually really welcomes this tendency of us feeling victims. Everything does everything to us. We are all suffering and we all have to stand for our rights because we're always victims. In reality, I don't know why people choose it, because it's massively disempowering.
Yeah.
It's so much more empowering to think that you have choice, that you choose your reaction, you choose how to behave, you choose what to think. And yeah, so that's a very empowering thing that, help a few of my clients to realize that actually they are in control of themselves and
That's
their
an
reaction.
interesting circle uh to follow, Erin, because what what the mind does a lot of times is try to protect us uh from what it deems dangerous. And
Yeah.
so that's why we're often compatible with authority, because the boundaries that are set, whether it's by parents or by society, make us feel safe. And so a lot of your clients probably their safety is like for all of us some kind of illusion, and we're giving into it because it makes us feel better. But what you're doing is you're bringing it around to say you actually do have control. That control should make you feel more secure because you have more power than you realize, as opposed to saying I feel safe because I'm within the boundaries of what's been prescribed for me,
There is a difference because I'm just listening to you, and boundaries actually are fantastic. It's a really good thing, and it definitely means
Yeah.
safety. So you're 100% correct. But beyond boundaries, there are rules. And here I may question, whether all rules are beneficial to us or not. So what I chose for myself, for example, I'm very law obedient,
Hmm.
and the law is my boundary, right? So I don't go beyond it because there's no need and I want to feel safe, right? And it's just easier for me.
Yeah.
But everything that is beyond law, that is not law, but societal rules, organizational rules, authority rules, here I would challenge. And I will only pick those rules that make sense to me and that work for me. It doesn't mean that I'm illegal. I don't do anything illegal.
Right.
But I also don't do anything that doesn't make me feel comfortable
But I
or doesn't
also
make sense to me.
Yeah, but I also suspect that your a lot of people follow rules of law out of fear, out of the consequence. In other
Yeah.
words, I'm not going to speed because if I speed, I'll get a ticket, and the ticket costs money, and
Oh my
I
God,
get
I
points.
speed all the time.
Well, okay, well, you just said you're not unlawful, but
Yeah, but it's
um,
it's it's not that bad, you
but
know.
I think you're saying that that in your case, you're making a conscious decision to be obedient in those cases when it comes to laws, because it just makes sense. The laws are there for a reason, makes you feel safe. It doesn't serve you to transgress in that way. It's not, part of being a rebel is that you're deciding when you are exceeding a certain boundry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like you can't be a rebel and say, okay, I'm a rebel, and so I break these laws because that's what rebels do. Because those are
I break the rules. I don't break the
yeah,
laws.
I
Yeah.
break the rules. Yeah. And rules are made to be broken, as they say. Rules are, that you have to consider the source, right? You have to consider, And that's something that also I think we don't do enough of. We start to get used to obedience and just make it across the board, right? Either you
Yeah.
don't care about anybody's rules, in which case you don't probably function very well in society. You probably hit up against progress a lot because you're not using any of it.
Yeah.
You're just kind of floating around out there.
Yeah.
Um, so, these things are here for us to use as tools in the world.
Yeah. And we're not only talking about obedience. I think there's a special word for it. It's called conformism.
Yeah.
And by the way, about rules, in Mind Valley, they have a course, although I probably don't not supposed to mention any companies since I'm not promoting anybody, but they call it bullshit rules.
Uh-huh.
And I love the rules because
Rules.
yeah.
Oh, I get it. Yeah. So what are some examples of rules?
Oh, really, I don't know. It's like you are a woman, you're not supposed to behave that way. Or you're a woman, you're supposed to have children, for example,
Yeah.
because all good women gonna have family and children, right? That is a rule.
Oh, I see. Yeah. That makes sense. And then there's it's interesting. We came out of a pandemic period, and that will test both sides. That tested people's sense of obedience, their trust of authority, their sense of mortality. I feel like I hate to say that it was a healthy thing to have happened because people died and people were ill and people have
Yeah,
long-term effects. So obviously
yeah,
there's not there if you had a choice, it wouldn't exist. But as a result, one of the things that happened was we challenged so many different things. Even if we acquiesced to rules or it still made us think. It still made us consider these things. And as we kind of circle around here, maybe you could talk a little bit about go back to that effortless concept and that state and just maybe summarize a little of what it is like to achieve that, what it feels like in daily life to achieve effortlessness.
right. Well, it feels, I don't know if we can describe the feeling. The first thing that comes to mind is peace.
Yeah.
You are always peaceful. Your emotions are always balanced. You don't have ups, you don't have downs. You are not reactive to external circumstances. You maintain very easy relationship with people because again, you're not reactive. You appreciate people for who they are. You accept it. You don't expect anything because expectations will go. They're part of your rules. And actually, when you ask me what the rules are, I would presume that pretty much everything that comes with should will be your rule. You should do like that. You should be this way. You should behave like that. Those are rules that we learn from our childhood. And this is something that we must challenge, if we want to find this freedom and peace with ourselves, to start with. So, yeah. And also, when you're in the state, you also have no worries, something we discussed before.
Yeah.
You have no depression or sad thinking because you just don't have procrastination. Everybody talks about procrastination. You don't have procrastination. You don't have fears. Because, for example, when I started going on podcasts, oh my God, before it just took me 3 years to think that I'm going to make myself public because that felt so uncomfortable. And I'm still a very private person. And then I started going on podcasts. People ask me, how do you do it? I'm like, well, I go, I don't think. If I start thinking about how people see me, how they go, what's going to write, somebody go, I just don't think about it because if I start thinking, I'm not going to do it.
Right.
And
Right.
it applies to everything, right? And it just makes it so easy. It's just effortless because you sail through. That's exactly where we started our conversation. I don't know if it sounds appealing enough to your audience, but I hope it does, because I'm a testament that it can be different.
Thanks so much for tuning into Truth Tastes Funny. If you enjoyed the experience, please leave a 5-star review and share this podcast with your friends.